What's up, fifth graders? So I'm back with another lesson. Last week we focused on figurative language, and today I'm just going to build off of that and talk about sound devices. But obviously, before we get into the lesson and the content of the lesson, I want to give a few shout outs. This time I didn't really do it based on class because I just felt like there were some people that I wanted to shout out that were from the same class. So first, I want to shout out to Marcus from Morehouse. DeMarcus has been submitting most of his assignments, and so I'm really proud of him for just putting in the work. Tahani, the quality of your work is really great. I'm so proud of you guys for continuing to push through this weird time. And Kayla, of course, you also are similarly putting in so much work, and I'm so proud of all three of you. So keep up the good work, and maybe you'll get shouted out again. All right. Let's move on to our do now. So this is just sort of a little bit of a review, but I want you to pause the video and on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter where, just write out what is a simile. What is a simile? So what is the definition of a simile? And then how is a metaphor different from a simile? Okay, so take the next few minutes to write that out on your piece of paper, and then you can check back on the answer when you're done. Okay, so the answer to this question, what is a simile? This is sort of a review. A simile is a comparison between two unlike things, using the words like or as, right? So Miss Saldig is as funny as a comedian, right? That is a simile. And because it uses the words like or as to compare me and a comedian, right? All right, and how is a metaphor different from a simile? A metaphor is comparing two things without using the words like or as. So it's the same as a simile. The only thing that's different is it doesn't use the words like or as. So it says that something is something. So Miss Saldig is a comedian. Obviously, I'm not actually a comedian, but I'm comparing myself to a comedian and implying or trying to say that I'm funny, right? So those are just examples of similes and metaphors. We're just going to continue practicing with these similes and metaphors because these are really important and authors use them a lot to convey different types of messages. So we're going to move on now to our objective for today. So today's objective is to identify sound devices, onomatopoeia, repetition, alliteration, and we're going to talk about rhyme a little bit, and figurative language, which we already reviewed that a little bit, the metaphors and the similes, to explain the author's purpose for using them, okay? So authors like to switch things up and make things interesting by using both sound devices and figurative language. So our objective today is just to be able to identify them, so to point them out in different texts, and then also explain why the authors use them. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about what are sound devices. I don't know why that looks like that, but we're going to make it work. So what are sound devices? Sound devices are elements of literature and poetry that emphasize sound, okay? So that might sound a little confusing and just like, what are you talking about? So basically they're just little words or things that authors use that sort of play with sound. And there's different ways that they do this. I'm going to talk to you guys about the different ways. So that's what sound devices really are. They just play around with sound in either poems or in just texts, other types of texts. So first we're going to talk about an easy one. One that we can identify super easily is just repetition. So when one or more words are repeated, and they do this to show urgency or importance, so they emphasize a specific word by repeating that word. For example, if an author wrote help, help, help in their text, you'd understand that they are trying to see or trying to show that they need help, or they might have some sort of sense of urgency, or that it's an important thing, right? So the word help is emphasized because it's repeated. That's repetition. That's probably one of the easiest sound devices or literary devices that authors use that we can identify because we just see a word more than once, and that's just repetition in and of itself, okay? So that's an easy one. Next, we have rhyme. Rhyme is another easy one that we've been taught time and time again as kids. When there are similar sounds at the end of a word or end of a line, in poems or songs. A lot of songs have rhymes, right? And so rhyming is literally just the repetition of a similar sound at the end of a line. Or it could be within a line, but we're going to talk more just about the end of the line. So an example is, Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. So wool and full rhyme. One for the master, one for the dame, and one for the little boy who lives down the lane. So dame and lane rhyme, right? Even though it's not the same exact sound or spelling, not the exact sound, it still sounds similar, right? So wool and full rhyme, but yet the way that they're spelled aren't the same. So be careful about that, because I think that sometimes we're taught that they're going to be spelled the same at the end, and they're not. So wool is O-O-L and full is U-L-L. And then dame and lane also, you can notice that although the M and the N are different, that doesn't mean that it doesn't rhyme. It still rhymes. So one for the dame and one for the little boy who lives down the lane. That still rhymes. It sounds similar, right? It doesn't say the exact same sound. It says similar sound, right? So that's rhymes. We know rhymes. We've been taught rhymes. So there's no need to sort of dwell on this. We're going to talk about another one, though, that I'm not sure if you guys know or have been told about before. So I'm going to teach you guys about alliteration. Alliteration is simply the repetition of the initial or the first sound in two or more neighboring words. When it says consonant, that just means that it's not a vowel. So repetition of initial consonant sounds in two or more neighboring words. Now that sounds kind of a lot, but it's really simple once you break it down. It just means that the sound at the beginning of a word sounds the same as the sound of a word that's right next to it or around it. So for example, Minnie Mouse, that's why you see Minnie Mouse here. Minnie, Mouse, both start with the sound Minnie Mouse. They both start with M sound, and so that's why that is alliteration. Here, he's been down in the dumps. Down and dumps both start with the same sound. And so notice how these aren't necessarily right next to each other. The words aren't like down dumps, but it's still alliteration because they're near each other. So he's been down in the dumps. That's alliteration. It's super easy to identify. You just need to know what alliteration is in order to identify it. So let's just try to remember what alliteration is as we move forward. All right, here's a fun one. Onomatopoeia. I know I've taught my students this, but I'm not sure if everyone knows about onomatopoeia. It's spelled really complicatedly. Don't worry about spelling. You're never going to be asked to spell the word onomatopoeia. But it literally just means the imitation of natural sounds in word form. So, for instance, authors try to make things sound like what they sound like. They try to spell out what things sound like in the text, and that just adds some fun, some spunk, and it emphasizes certain sounds to make us understand the world that they're trying to paint for us. So for example, the word sizzle is a onomatopoeia because it sounds like what it is. So sizzle, right? Kind of sounds like an actual sizzling pan, right? Sizzle. And then crackle also sounds like the sound. Pop, hiss, bang, all of those are onomatopoeia because they sound like the sound that they're trying to explain, right? So that's onomatopoeia. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work through some questions because y'all's independent practice for the week is going to be working through some multiple choice questions of identifying these different sound devices and why authors use them or how they're being used. So here's a poem. I'm going to read the poem, and then I'm going to talk through how I would think through this question. So, Johnny just jokes with me when I ask him for the keys to the trunk with magic toys. You're too small to play with them. Go play with dolls. You have a tea party. The magic toys are for big boys. I smile and spout and run about, but Johnny won't listen to me. He hides the key and laughs at me. So I'm noticing a few things just in this poem before I even look at the question. First, I'm noticing that that there's a little bit of rhyme, but not at the end of there is rhyme at the end of these sentences. Johnny just jokes with me when I ask him for the key. Me and key rhyme. And I'm also noticing that there's a little bit of alliteration. Alliteration is, or just a reminder, the repetition of the initial sounds or the first sounds in a word. So Johnny just jokes is alliteration, I think, because the first sounds of the word are repeated in neighboring words. You're too small to play with them. Yeah, it seems like there's a little bit of rhyming within the lines as well. So this is just me noticing things about the poem before I even dive into the questions, just in case some of these stuff might come up in the questions themselves, and it makes it easier for me to come up with an answer. All right, so let's take a look at the question. Which line from the poem above is an example of alliteration? Okay, so already I know that I already identified a line that has alliteration, but I'm still going to look through all of these and make sure they have they either do or don't have alliteration, so I can sort of break it down and pick the right answer choice. So just because I know which one I think has or the one that I identified before doesn't mean I'm still not going to look at the other answer choices. So A, Johnny just jokes with me. Of course, Johnny just jokes with me, but all of the first letters of the first 3 words are of the same sound, and so I think that is a solid answer choice. But again, I'm still going to look at the other answer choices just to make sure that I'm not picking the wrong one. B, when I ask him for the key. Okay, so I'm looking for alliteration is when this first sound of the words sound the same. When I ask him for the key, there is not a single word that sounds the same. Go play with dolls, have a tea party. Also does not rhyme. Does not have any alliteration because there's no repetition of sound. But Johnny won't listen to me. Answer choice D. But Johnny won't listen to me. Okay, so that also does not have any alliteration because no sounds are repeated. So the best answer choice is A. So Johnny just jokes with me has alliteration because the first sound in the first 3 words all sound the same. Johnny just jokes. All start with the J sound. All right, we're going to take a look at another question. So this poem is called Chase by J. Robbins. We have 2 tiny puppies whose names are Pit and Pat. They love to run around the house and chase our cat named Splat. Pit pat, splat. Okay, first and foremost, I already noticed that there's some rhyming going on. The sounds pit and pat also are alliteration because P, they both start with a P sound. And with pit, pat, and splat, they all kind of sound like sounds, but I'm not sure what sound. So I'm going to figure this out as I'm working through the question. What is the purpose of repeating the words pit, pat, and splat in the last line of this poem? So I need to go back and see what the poem was trying to do when it was repeating those sounds, pit, pat, and splat. So it says that they love to run around the house and chase our cat named Splat. So the title of the text is also called Chase. So I think that it's emphasizing this whole like running around and chasing the cat. And so I think that the pit, pat, splat kind of sounds like dogs running around or cats running around, right? So maybe it has to do with that. Let's take a look at the answer choices and see if it matches what we just sort of came up with. So A, to help the reader learn the pets' names. Okay, so the pets' names are Pit, Pat, and Splat, but I'm not sure that the author repeated it at the end to help me remember or learn those names. So I don't think that's a strong answer choice. B, to teach the reader how to play chase. I'm not sure it's teaching me how to play chase, but that's an interesting way of saying it. I'm not sure. I don't think that's a strong answer choice. It doesn't match what I came up with. To copy the sounds of dog barking. Pit, pat, splat. Doesn't sound like a dog barking. That's not a strong answer choice. To copy the sounds of a game of chase. Yes, this is probably the strongest answer choice, and it matches what I was saying, that it was sort of emphasizing the fact that this sounds like a game of chase, or that the pit, pat, and splat sound like a game of chase. Alright, so we're going to take a look again at this Johnny Just Jokes With Me poem, and take a look at another question. Okay, Johnny just jokes with me when I ask him for the key to the trunk with magic toys. You're too small to play with them. Go play with dolls. Have a tea party. The magic toys are for big boys. I smile and spout and run about, but Johnny won't listen to me. He hides the key and laughs at me. Okay, so the line to the trunk with magic toys is an example of alliteration because, okay, so this wasn't really one that I identified as alliteration earlier, but I think it's important to still know that there's other lines that I might have missed, right? So, to the trunk with magic toys. To the trunk with magic toys. Okay, so I need to remember what is alliteration, right? Alliteration is the repetition of the initial sound, the initial consonant sound. So, Which initial consonant sound is being repeated? To the trunk with magic toys. To the trunk with magic toys. So the T sound is repeated, right? So that's the sound that's repeated in terms of alliteration. So let's take a look at which one matches that answer choice that we just came up with. The author uses rhyme in it. Yes, the author does use rhyme in it, but it's not. Oh, sorry, the author does not use rhyme in this line. To the trunk with magic toys is not rhyme. So that's not a good answer choice. B, the trunk has magical toys. Yeah, but what does that have to do with sound and alliteration? So, no. C, the T sound is repeated. Yes, this matches exactly our answer, but I'm going to keep it and work through the other answer before make sure that this is the best answer. D, the speaker cannot have the key. The speaker cannot have the key is not strong because it doesn't have to do with the sound, and I know the alliteration has to do with sound. So the best answer choice is C. All right, we're going to go back and practice sort of identifying what similes and metaphors are before I push you guys to work on your independent practice. So it says, which line is an example of a simile? Before I even look at the answer choices, I need to think about what I'm looking for. So what is a simile? I need to go back to my my definition of what a simile is. A simile is the comparison, I think, of two things that uses the words like or as, right? So I know for a fact I'm looking for the words like or as in my in this sentence, whichever line that they give me. So I'm going to look for that word, and I'm also going to think, what is it comparing? All right, so let's take a look at our answer choices. A, the smallest grain of mustard seed. I don't see the words like or as in answer choice A, so I'm going to go ahead and cross that one out. B, how large unto the tiny fly. How large unto the tiny fly. It's not really comparing anything, and it's not using the words like or as, so it's not a strong answer choice. All right, C, must little things appear. I don't see the words like or as, and it's not comparing anything. So let's see if D, even though all my answer choices are crossed out besides D, I'm still going to make sure that D is a simile because I might have made a mistake. D, a rosebud like a feather bed. A rosebud, like, there's my word like, so let's make sure we're comparing two things. Rosebud like a feather bed. Yes, it's comparing a rosebud and a feather bed. There we go. D is our answer. All right, y'all, it is your turn to independently work through. I hope that these sound devices are not too confusing for you. I'm going to make sure that I have a list of the resource for you so that you guys can look at that as you're working through the independent practice. So the independent practice is on Google Classroom. There's a Google form for you to practice. Submit it and click the turn in button. We're taking attendance, so I want to make sure that we're counting that you guys are doing the work. So even if you watch this video, I don't know if you watch the video unless you do the independent practice. So make sure you click turn in, and that's your assignment for the week for reading in terms of graded assignments. That's really it, you guys. I hope that you guys are doing phenomenally and you're continuing to learn through these weird times. I miss you guys so much, and I'll catch y'all next week.